We'll ask everyone to please be seated at this time. We're about to begin the services for Mrs. Marsha L. Newman. Want to welcome everyone here at the chapel in Skokie, as well as all of you that are viewing the service from online remotely. Just a gentle reminder for those of you present in the chapel, if you have a cell phone with you, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. Thank you. Officiating today is Rabbi Jeffrey Weil and Cantor Daniel Gale, both from the Ezra Habanim, the Niles Township Jewish congregation in Skokie.
We begin with the ritual of Kriya, which means tearing, and is for the direct mourners, the halakhic, according to Jewish law, mourners, that would be Rich and Dan, to do a tearing, whether it's a ribbon or a garment. For the child of the deceased, the tear is over the heart, and for the other mourners, it would be on the right side of the chest. Kriya, tearing, is an ancient ritual. It is from the Bible. When something very sad would happen, something calamitous, something shocking, our biblical forebears would do that act of kriya, really in a sense exposing their wounded insides, their wounded hearts. And the blessing that Rich and Dan will recite in just a moment acknowledges God, even during sad times, as the true judge, as the Dayan HaEmet. So I ask Rich and Dan to stand. Death has taken our beloved Marsha Newman. Our friends, her family, in fact, indeed many of us, all of us, grieve in a world that is darker. In the silence of the mourners, there is lamentation. In their tears, loneliness. May they find the presence of loving friends to support them, and God, please be with them. For Marsha's love that united all of us in life and which death does not sever, for her companionship that she shared with us along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart, her sweetness, her kindness. For all of that is now a precious remembrance. And we thank God for her and for the memory of all that she brought to this world. In this time of grief, we turn to our sacred scriptures. 23rd Psalm is, of course, one. You'll find that psalm in our handouts, and I call upon my colleague, Cantor Daniel Gale, to lead us in the 23rd Psalm in Hebrew.
מזמור דוד, אדוני רואי, לא אחסר. בינות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי שובב ינחייני ומגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי ילך בגיא צל מוות, לא יירא, כי אתה עמדי. שבדך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דשנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
We read the 23rd Psalm together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Adonai, mi yagor b'ohelecha, mi ishkon b'char kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo. The words of the psalmist, Adonai, eternal God, who may abide in your holy mountain, in your holy house? Who may dwell there? It is those who are upright, those who do justly, those who speak truth within their hearts, those who would not slander others or wrong them, or bring shame upon others. It is those who scorn lawlessness, but honor those who revere God. It is those who give their word and come what may, do not retract, who would not exploit the vulnerable. Those who live in such a good way shall never be shaken. The words of King Solomon, L'chol zman ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which is planted, a time to tear down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time when we must refrain from our embraces, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear, a time for kriya, for tearing, and a time to sow, for mending, a time for silence, and a time to speak. And so we speak. God said, "It is not right for one to be alone." And so the eternal God placed Adam in a deep slumber, removed a rib, and fashioned Eve. And they looked at each other, Adam and Eve, and they said, "This one is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh." And they were one. And so they were for a long time, through good years and through times of adversity as well. During all those times, they cleaved one to the other. The story of Adam and Eve. It's also the story of Marsha and Rich Newman. It was meant to be, this couple. I believe it was at their 50th anniversary that they celebrated, as they often celebrated, simchas, sad times too. But this was a simcha at our synagogue, Ezra Habanim, the Niles Township Jewish congregation. And they sponsored the Kiddush, and they were on the bima talking about their past and thanking people. And Marsha talked about her initial attraction to this man, Rich Newman. And she said that when she was a girl, she had liked a skinny boy who was involved in Jewish activities, and she thought, I want to find someone like that. Well, seek and you shall find. Marsha and Rich found each other, a north side, south side match that lasted nearly 6 decades, supporting each other during health challenges, during, of course, the tragedy of the loss of their younger son, Jeremy. And they celebrated wonderful times, raising their sons, Dan's marriage to extremely devoted daughter-in-law, Gu, and their 3 grandchildren, Nathaniel, Clare, and Timmy, whom Marsha loved and loved to talk about with all her heart. Her journey started 80 years ago. Marsha was the only child of Esther and Jack. They divorced when Marsha was just 9 years old, unusual for the time. She would continue to see her father, Jack, every couple of weeks, and later she would include him in family life. Marsha and her mom, Esther, were very close. Esther was protective of her only child, perhaps at times a little more protective than Marsha wanted. Regardless, they were very close. And Marsha's childhood, despite the disruption of the divorce, was full of happy times with cousins and aunts and uncles and so forth. Marsha was obviously a good student. She first went to Senn and then graduated from Mather. Then she enrolled at U of I at Navy Pier, and for her final year, she was in the College of Pharmacy. She had been, around this time, on a couple of dates with a young man. That was not working out, but that young man graciously, and I would say very perceptively, very auspiciously, thought that she might like this fellow, Rich Newman, a fraternity brother. When he described this fellow, Rich Newman, Marsha thought she knew whom he was describing. And she thought, oh, I don't like that guy. But she had the wrong guy. At a party, Marsha met the real Rich Newman, and she thought, oh, this one's a possibility. Rich, meanwhile, was executing his own dating plans. This is going to be a who knew kind of story. Rich had arranged 3 dates with 3 different young women on one night. Right. First one, not right. Second, not quite. Third, just right. And so the romance began. That was Marsha, the third. The charm. They began dating. When Rich decided it was time to introduce Marsha to his parents, they headed down to Flossmoor, where Rich is from. And Rich's parents were pharmacists. So Rich, during that dinner at his house, just sat there feeling a little bit invisible. He said he could have left and no one would have noticed. But that's okay. His parents obviously loved Marsha. At another early point in their relationship, Rich felt it was time to inform Marsha that he had been recently diagnosed with epilepsy. He was anxious, young man. What would she say? Would this be the end of their relationship? And so he showed Marsha, the way he told her was he showed her one of his pills, Dilantin. Marsha, the pharmacy student, immediately understood. It did not end the relationship, obviously. We all know Marsha, and the rest is history. Still, when Rich, a little while later, raised the possibility of marriage to Marsha, she was emphatic. She said, "I'm not marrying you or anyone else until I finish pharmacy school and get certified." That happened, though, of course, and they married at 22 years old, both of them, an August wedding. Marsha, certified pharmacist at this point, Rich in computers, first lived in West Rogers Park. They then moved to Brummel and Evanston, where the Newman family really came to be. First Dan, and then 4.5 years later, Jeremy, 2 boys. Before too long, they were at 3630 Grove Street, the Newman family headquarters for many decades. Marsha was, as Dan said, always there for her sons. She was also always conflict avoidant. And so when Dan or Jeremy misbehaved, she outsourced discipline to Rich. She was an affectionate mom. If she gave one son a hug, the other one got a hug too. Equal time, she would say, equal time. You could sort of hear her saying that too. When the boys were still young, Marsha began taking shifts as a pharmacist at St. Francis Hospital. She was a studious, accurate pharmacist and was once awarded Employee of the Month at St. Francis. Marsha loved this man, Rich, but she was not a fan of his foul habit, smoking. Who knew that Rich was a smoker at one point? So she developed a strategy, I think, that very much fit her personality. Patiently and persistently, each night when Rich returned home from work, Marsha asked simply, "Have you quit smoking yet?" Night after night, Rich said no. Annoyed, perhaps, but no matter. She continued to ask, "Have you quit smoking yet?" every night. And one evening when she asked that, Rich was about to respond with an aggravated no. And as he was doing that, he began hacking, coughing. And that was that. Marsha's mission accomplished. Our synagogue was very much a part of Marsha and Rich's life, of the Newmans' life. I have here, in fact, we have a thick Newman file in our files. This is your application for membership. Richard B. Newman, wife's name Marsha L, and all your information. Children, Daniel Mark, Jeremy Scott. This is from 1978, August, and more fun things. Dan's religious school application when he was 7.5 years old. A handwritten letter that Marsha wrote to executive director in grateful appreciation for a gift that the Newmans made to the Gan Yeladim, to our nursery school. One of, honestly, many supportive gifts that the Newmans provided to our congregation over the decades. So the synagogue was very much part of their lives. Marsha was a long-time sisterhood member. She served in recent years on a social action committee and more. And fellow congregants, and many of whom are here right now, are sad over Marsha's passing, over this loss. Everyone is commenting on, well, the word that keeps coming up is sweet. How sweet, genuinely sweet Marsha was, and kind, and she was so easy to talk to. In her understated way, I think we all feel that Marsha was just pleasant to be around. She had that vibe. It was just nice to be in her physical presence. Meanwhile, back in the day at the Newman home, Dan and Jeremy were growing up and they were heading out. And Jeremy's illness, his mental illness in young adulthood, obviously became a primary concern for Marsha and Rich and for Dan. And Marsha, the pharmacist, utilized her contacts and her resources and her knowledge to help stabilize her son, and there were certainly successes, for sure. But the illness roared back and led to his passing at 34 years old, and no words can capture the depth of the loss, of course. Marsha and Rich developed the tradition of setting a place for Jeremy at their Shabbat table every Friday night, a powerful way to keep him close. Friday nights also came to offer other opportunities regarding family. They would also Zoom with Dan and Gu, Nathaniel, Clare, and Timmy. On Friday nights, the 5 of them together on Zoom, Massachusetts, Chicagoland. Marsha really loved, your grandmother really loved talking about all of you. She would give us news, and you all brought her a lot of nachas, a lot of joy. The last few years, as we all know, have been difficult and increasingly difficult for Marsha, but she handled Parkinson's nobly, with strength. She did what she had to do, her therapy. She also exercised her mind. She kept reading. When I visited Rich and Marsha a couple times recently at Mather, where they moved about a year ago, I asked Marsha some questions about, like some pharmacological questions, and the Merck Index, a thick book of pharmacy definitions and so forth, was like right there, accessible, and it was dog-eared. She had put that book through a lot. She was very knowledgeable. Marsha had aides during this time. Hayat and Tonia have been extraordinarily helpful to the family. They helped Marsha do all the normal things, like shopping, for instance, which she continued to do. And they have become part of our community, accompanying Marsha to Ezra Havanim Niles Township. And Marsha especially loved attending the Sisterhood's Wednesday luncheons and programs. She really loved that, and everybody was always happy to see her. And we'll all miss her. She was also a beloved sister-in-law to Larry and Barbara, and an aunt to Julie and to Bruce. She was a beloved cousin and co-worker and friend. And so, friends, we are now in the midst of a 7-week period called the Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, the 7 weeks that connect the thrill of liberation of Passover to the awe of revelation that we honor and commemorate on Shavuot. 7 weeks, and we count every single evening. It's the counting of the Omer. And we Jews, we use these 7 weeks, as our sages commanded, to evaluate our characters, our various attributes, to make sure that we would be ready, in a sense, for Shavuot, for the revelation of Torah. So we're supposed to focus on our character traits. For instance, do we possess fortitude in the face of adversity? Do we lead with kindness? Are we industrious? Are we loyal? Are we patient? Are we generous? For Marsha Newman, yes, yes, and yes to all of that. She was truly an Eshet Chayil, a valorous woman, a woman of valor. May we all have such people in our lives. May her model be an example to all of us. And Zichronah Livracha, may Marsha's memory ever be for blessing. Amen. It is my honor now to call forward her son, Dan.
Marsha Newman was born September 13th, 1944, to Esther and Jack Probisky. She grew up in the city of Chicago. When she married my dad, they still lived in Chicago. Only shortly before I was born, in 1970, did she venture to live 2 blocks north of the city limits on Brummel in Evanston. A few years later, she moved to Skokie, where they lived on Grove Street for 46 years. And last year, she moved to Mather Place in Wilmette, which she loved, even though it's the farthest north of Chicago either of my parents have ever lived. My mom was such a nice lady and a great mom. My mom had an incredible memory. She could remember names and faces better than anyone. Her grammar school friend, Jerry Dolans, who also happens to be my dad's fraternity brother, has said she was his, I call it, go-to eyewitness or professional witness for reunion planning. She could remember the names from the faces in the grammar school photos, the 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and so on, so that Jerry could ensure he had his invite lists complete for those reunions. And she was so good at this that for some people, she can find them in the pictures when they couldn't find themselves. All right. She loved taking pictures. We went through a lot of boxes over the last couple of days, but every single box, album, envelope was labeled. And inside all of them, every photo was labeled with who was in the photo and when it was taken. Whose graduation was that? Whose bar mitzvah? Wedding? What year did Ben Wexler and I do blah, blah, blah? I never have to guess. It is always carefully written on the back of the print. And I don't think she liked digital photos that much because she couldn't make the notes the same way. When I was in grammar school, I loved gym class. I participated in all the sports. One of the more fun was floor hockey. So we'd have kids running with sticks, hitting pucks, trying to score goals. It was awesome. It was a great way to spend part of your school day. One day, I came home from school, and my mom noticed a mark on my face and asked me what happened. I was goalie that day, and not to brag, I blocked a lot of shots, including one right here on my nose. And I thought it was a pretty good stop. And I hadn't thought too much more about it because it really didn't even hurt. But you can imagine how my mom felt when she heard about it. I didn't quite understand what was happening next, but my mom got on the phone in the other room and I just went and played Lego or whatever it was that day, and I forgot about it. Well, the next day, if every goalie wasn't wearing their goalie mask, and we were reminded constantly to keep it on. I knew it was my mom's phone call that got that change and got it enforced rather thoroughly. Nobody messes with her son's schnoz. Okay. So my mom was a hospital pharmacist at St. Francis Hospital for 40 years. She took pride in her work and was still reading pharmacy journals when she was in the rehab center. The intersection of pharmacy and motherhood also had its benefits, especially for me and Jeremy. I was a regular at the emergency room. It seemed to be about a yearly occurrence for me. One thing or another, broken arm, chipped tooth, falling off the furniture, jumping off the furniture, maybe tackling my brother, who's to say? As a hospital pharmacist, one of the things my mom did was the drug inspection and the inventory for the ER. She knew all the nurses, so when I would go to the emergency room, it was much less scary than it would have been otherwise. When my brother Jeremy got sick, it was obviously a difficult time. In addition to that, mental health coverage wasn't included in basic health insurance like it is today. My brother needed all this treatment, and it wasn't covered. My mom started making calls. Everyone wanted to help us because they all loved her. She was always nice. She worked Christmas Eve and Christmas Day every year. She asked other people's kids and spouses after other people's kids and spouses and remembered the answers. When she said she hoped you were doing well, it wasn't a hollow sentiment. She meant it. When she needed help, people wanted to help her. My mom was able to get gratis psychiatric appointments, free samples of the medication he needed, and other treatment. There was another time, I think I was having a little trouble in school. I don't remember the exact situation. Maybe it had to do with some new video game I had just gotten, I'm not sure. But my mom, in order to show her support, told me she'd love me no matter what grade I got, an A or a B. Of course, I knew what she meant, and I was old enough at the time that it was even funny to me then. So, she was always interested in what everyone was up to. She visited us whenever she could. She enjoyed all the different places we lived and went on many vacations with us. Whether it was catching shows in New York City when I was at school in New Jersey, or the Wild Animal Park, or Balboa Park when we lived in San Diego, or the JFK Presidential Library in Boston, or the Grinnell College Museum of Art, or Storyland in North Conway, New Hampshire, or Bar Harbor and Acadia National Park in Maine, she was up for it. The best of those adventures was the one she and my dad organized, where all 7 of us, that's my mom and dad, Goo, and Nathaniel, Clare and Timmy, and me, went to Israel for 2 weeks. It was an incredible, generous trip. Also fortuitously timed in 2016 during one of the latest in the year Hanukkahs, and so everyone had school vacation. By that time, she had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, but she was still all in. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and she was so happy to have done that with her grandchildren. In the last few years, it had become too difficult for her to travel. I spent more time coming to visit her, and I thought more about the importance of the Passover Seders my parents would host. Especially with our kids in college and beyond, it made it a rare occurrence to have them all sleeping under one roof. I'm so happy that my kids look forward to coming to Seder from wherever they happen to be, in part so they are together, and in part to visit their beloved grandparents. Whether it was Claire's 7-hour bus ride from Grinnell, or Nathaniel's multimodal trip from Lewiston to Portland to O'Hare, they, my children, have always reminded me to make their bookings. My mom hadn't been doing so well recently. I'm so glad to have been here for the past 2 weeks, and so happy that she saw my kids on some of her better days over Passover. Last week, my dad and I went to her grandniece Jessica Cooley's wedding. Although my mom would have preferred to go herself, my wife, Goo, was at her bedside every day. Goo shared with my mom the steady stream of photos we sent her from the event. My mom really enjoyed seeing them, and she loved Goo so much. I'm glad my dad and I were there when she passed. I know that does not always happen for people. It was good to be there at that moment, even though it was unexpected. We are also so happy to heard from so many of you about what a nice lady she was. My mom was a loving and caring wife to my dad. She was a joyful and protective mother to my brother and I. She was a thoughtful and kind friend and co-worker. And she was enthusiastic and generous grandmother to my 3 kids. Thank you. Well.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you. Nathaniel. Oh, Nathaniel's next? Oh, you're all going together. Nathaniel, Clare, and Timmy, grandchildren. Okay, thank you.
My sophomore year of college, we had October break, not uncommon, about halfway through the semester, a week and a half, or half a week off. Grammy texted me, my brother, and my sister in a group chat, which I'm still amazed and impressed that she figured out how to do this, and said, "When I went to college, we did not have October break. But in October 1962, there was the Cuban Missile Crisis. I kept asking myself, why bother to study if we are going to die?" Grammy. Grammy still studied, though. The first time my Gramps said he wanted to marry her, she replied, "I cannot even think about getting married to anyone until I finished pharmacy school." And she did. And they got married.
3 years ago, my childhood best friend was diagnosed with cancer, the kind that means she can't really have a full-time job and has a GoFundMe page. We told Grammy about this, and she immediately asked for Phaedra's address. A week later, Phaedra received a box containing a check, a cat-themed card, and a seasonally appropriate stuffed animal. That was who Grammy was. She would, of course, help my friend who was having a hard time, but there's no way she was going to figure out a website. Grammy knew Phaedra because Phaedra did middle school theater with me, and Grammy owned a DVD copy of every performance me and my brothers were ever in. When I was 8 years old, tap dancing to It's a Hard Knock Life, when Nathaniel was the Cannibal King in Dr. Dolittle, when Timmy was a frat brother in Legally Blonde. Grammy had it all on DVD. Even if she had been to see it in person, she had a physical copy too. Nobody loved us more.
Grammy loved normal things. She loved being from Chicago. Her after-prom party was seeing Louis Armstrong perform, which I know wasn't a lie because she mentioned it offhand one time while we were in the rental minivan on the way to dinner. She pointed out the high school she went to every single time we passed it. And the first time my mom visited Chicago, she insisted taking her future daughter-in-law to the Rock and Roll McDonald's, a great representation of her home city. But seeing Louis Armstrong perform after prom only warranted a single offhand mention 3 years ago.
Grammy was not someone who I would call an avid sports fan, though she did always seem to be at least culturally aware of some of the more important Chicago sports happenings. I remember her once correcting me that it was not Lovie Smith who had just been fired as head coach of the Chicago Bears, but rather Mark Trestman. A few years ago, when the Bears drafted the ill-fated Mitch Trubisky, she purchased a Mitch Trubisky jersey. Don't know how excited she was that the Bears had found their quarterback of the future. Ooh. But she was very excited that she could, with the creative use of some duct tape and a Sharpie, make herself a very nice Chicago Bears jersey with Probisky, her father's last name, on the back.
I think secretly she was thrilled when her son, Danny, Danny, my dad, married a Goy because that meant more opportunities to spoil her grandchildren. Obviously, we still got wonderful and thoughtful gifts from Nordy's, or another store at Old Orchard Mall, for each night of Hanukkah, but that would have happened no matter who her grandkids were. Me with my Irish curls, of course she had to send me the glitteriest shamrock t-shirt they made every March, and every December, a new singing Santa animatronic, and of course, an Easter egg hunt the day after the Afikoman hunt. Even when I was in college, Grammy would send us holiday gifts. The Baby Yoda Halloween jack-o'-lantern oven mitts she sent me my junior year of college still live in my college roommate Nellie's kitchen. Nobody loved us more.
In high school, I, like my brother before me, had the uniquely nerdy honor to attend a Model United Nations conference in Chicago. While we, of course, had to attend such important diplomatic negotiations, such as drafting a treaty preventing the colonization of space, allocating the proper budget to UNICEF's vaccine information campaigns, deciding which ancient ruins deserve UNESCO World Heritage status, and, of course, ending war forever, most of the students took the opportunity to explore all the great things Chicago had to offer. Nathaniel and I had, of course, already seen much of Chicago, so we used it as an opportunity to see our grandparents. I loved the feeling like we got bonus time with Grammy and Gramps. My dad said Grammy always committed to and talked about equal time for him and my Uncle Jeremy.
So, sorry, Claire. Maybe you should have tried being better at Model UN?
Grammy appreciated cute things and lovely things and beautiful things and small things. She loved hearing about the Jewish deli near where I live in Boston and how good the Reuben is there. When I wrote a paper for my morphology class about pluralization of nouns in Yiddish, she and my Gramps not only sent me books to help with my research, they also read my paper. My long, dry, dense with linguistics vocabulary paper. It didn't matter. She loved me, so she read it.
Whenever we stayed at Grammy and Gramps' house, I would sleep on an air mattress in the brown room. All the bookshelves were filled with Madame Alexander dolls, Betty Boop, little locket boxes, and all sorts of other little things. Some had smaller things inside of them or had a mechanism of some sort. So obviously I would play with every one, open and close them, lay them out on the floor, and most importantly, figure out how they worked. I'm a mechanic now. Grammy had a lot of tchotchkes like this all throughout the house. Quarter-sized, colored enamel, magnet closure boxes decorated with hummingbirds and orchids and dragonflies, or pumpkins, make-believes, and acorns. I've inherited this habit from Grammy. I love collecting my own tchotchkes and putting them on the desk by my computer or on my box at work. I've even expanded my collection to knickknacks and curios as well. A small ceramic frog I keep in an old single-serving jam jar. A miniature Coca-Cola lunchbox that would go perfectly with Grammy's mini Coca-Cola fridge and tiny Coca-Cola cooler. An enamel pin referencing a media property that will never be as ubiquitous as Betty Boop.
My mom used to always say that Grammy would love me even if I was an axe murderer. Well, I'm happy to report I am not an axe murderer. I am in law school, though, so perhaps maybe I should have aimed a little bit higher. Grammy was the best. Nobody loved us more. Nobody could have. Thank you.
Those are absolutely beautiful remembrances with all the detail, and it shows how much you and your Grammy and your Gramps all love each other, and also provides a lot of us some more depth to the life that of the Newman. So thank you all for all of your remarks. Leida hi reshit, uftira tachlit hachaim kamasahem, kahalicha tzmicha mishalav shalav. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination. Life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. The life journey of Marsha Newman has reached its final destination. And so, O God, into your care we entrust the spirit of Marsha Newman, for you keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain all of us, O God, that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead for all of us, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, O God, will be with us as a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our lives. You are our hope in eternity. We now rise for the memorial prayer, the El Malei Rachamim, Cantor Daniel Gale.
Hail, Malei Rachamim, Shochein, שוכנה במרומים. המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים, במעלות קדושים, קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים את נשמת מנוחה בת יעקב הלוי ואסתר שהלכה לעולמה. בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה. Anna, 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 Bahal harachamim, Hastireha beseter knafecha לעולמים, ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום. משכבה ונאמר אמן.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Marsha Newman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence within the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And we say, Amen. You may be seated.
The interment will take place at Zion Gardens Cemetery, which is located in Chicago. For those of you joining us in procession, we will make sure that we will have an orange funeral sticker for the inside portion of your front windshield, as well as a magnetic flag for the top of your car. And please use your bright headlights and your emergency flashers lights at all times during the procession. The Shiva will be observed at the Mather in Wilmette at 2801 Old Glenview Road in Wilmette on Thursday, today, from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m., and then again on Friday from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., and then condolence calls will be accepted also at the Mather on Saturday from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. And if the parking lot is full, just please keep in mind there is street parking on Old Glenview Road as well as other side streets in the area. The memorial contributions, the family has asked to go to the Ezra Habanim Niles Township Jewish Congregation or the Greater Chicago Food Depository. All this information is listed in the service folder you received on your way in, and it's also, for those of you viewing it from remotely, is on our Chicago Jewish Funerals website. At this time, I'll ask the following pallbearers to please step forward. That is Mrs. Newman's daughter-in-law, Gu Newman, and her grandchildren, Nathaniel, Clare, and Timmy Newman. I'll ask everyone to rise at this time. Friends, if you're going to the cemetery, we'll ask that you go directly to your cars.